The Rockford 200, held at the quarter-mile Rockford Speedway in Illinois, has always been the most prestigious event of the ARLA Elite Series schedule. After all, Rockford was the site of the original scrimmage race that paved the way for the founding of the league, so naturally it has always had a special place on the circuit. Unfortunately, the league stopped coming to the track after the 2000 season. Negotiations between the ARLA officials and Rockford promoters broke down because I believe that the promoters wanted more money than the league was willing to pay, so Rockford was cut from the schedule. The track's date was ultimately taken by Daytona, which angered a lot of the longtime fans and teams because they argued that Daytona was too much of a crapshoot to be a suitable site for the season finale. Thankfully, the track returned to the schedule in 2009, and that race was won by 1996 champion Patrick Carpino, who came out of retirement to compete in that race. Although Carpino's victory came as a very big surprise to some of the modern-day fans, that kind of result was very typical when the league ran here in the past. This race was and will probably continue to be a very good showcase for some of our regional and part-time teams. For this year's running, officials changed the race format to resemble those of other major short track races across the country. There were 10 heat races held with 8 or 9 cars each, and those races transferred into the 5 main qualifiers. And then, depending on where you finished in the qualifiers, you transferred to either the B or C mains, which were 120 laps and award half points, or you went right to the 200. By the way, the B and C mains will still pay full bonus points for winning the pole and leading laps. Also, the drivers who win the B and C mains will transfer to the Rockford 200, and they will be able to keep the points that they received in the B and C mains. And now I will hand it off to Scott while I get suited up for the C main. Thank you, Earl. Rockford 200 night kicked off with the C main, featuring the drivers 21st through 30th in points, and the drivers who finished 5th and 6th in the qualifying races. Jim Hayes won the pole in his number 20 Tonnerre Thunder, but here comes Olivier Martinez off of turn 2. He sweeps by Hayes to take the lead, with Mike Andrews in car number 500 following suit. A few laps later, Lucas Hunter in car number 01 would come up towards the front, and that is Jamie Flock in the 09 in third. Hunter has the run coming off of turn 4, but he can't quite make the pass on Olivier Martinez going into turn 1. The first caution came out on lap 5. Allie Riggs in the 19 gets into Lucas Sweeney coming off of turn 4. That takes both cars into the inside wall. There's really no excuse for driving that aggressively this early in the race, especially in Allie Riggs' case since, well, this is kind of a familiar thing for her. Olivier Martinez continues to lead on the restart with Lucas Hunter still in hot pursuit, and there he goes. Hunter got a great start, and he knows it. He sweeps around Olivier Martinez going into 3, and it looks like Jamie Flock is going to follow him. A few laps later, you're going to see Lawrence Byrne, the 68, making a charge towards the front, and there you have Leigh Grell and Bruce Wilkinson in 3rd and 4th. Olivier Martinez has fallen back to 5th. The second and final caution came out on lap 22. Jim Hayes gets into Kyle Eckerton coming off of turn 2. That takes both cars into the inside wall, and Eckerton is going to get hammered by Mike Howard. DJ Daniels gets a piece of that, and Lucas Sweeney gets collected as well. That is going to be the end of the day for Eckerton and Howard. Jim Hayes was given a warning for aggressive driving. He already got into a scuffle with Henrietta Laverne III in his qualifying race. While under yellow, Lucas Hunter comes to a stop for some reason. Leigh Grell doesn't and piles into the back of the 01. I can't say I blame Grell for that, and unfortunately for the 46, that damage was terminal. The officials promptly called Lucas Hunter to the hauler. Also under this yellow, the unreliability of the Meridian Bolt strikes Ricky Flush once again. White Mountain Motorsports has had numerous mechanical issues with the Meridian Bolt, and, well, it's a mystery to me why they've stuck with them so long. In the meantime, Lucas Hunter continues to lead on the restart. Lucas Sweeney is the last car on the lead lap. Well, not anymore. But a few laps later, here comes Lawrence Byrne to take the lead, and he gets into the 01 a little bit, but no harm done. It's a fairly common thing to see cars leaning on each other here. Jim Hayes is falling back in that 20 car, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because the Tonnerre Thunder was very fast in the heats and qualifying races. and it looks like Hayes is struggling to find his footing right now. Lucas Sweeney gets into another on-track scuffle, this time with Siju Dejao in the 37. The 37 hooks the 8 coming off of turn 2 and takes both cars into the wall. Lucas Sweeney immediately pits to get that repaired. It's hard not to feel sorry for Sweeney. His car has probably taken the most abuse of anyone tonight. Olivier Martinez assumes the lead of the race once again. He takes it from Lawrence Burr, who hangs on to the second spot. But shortly afterwards, Olivier Martinez would be challenged by Earl McDermott, who mentioned that he was in this race, but he probably wouldn't have wanted me to tell you that he started in last. But it probably doesn't matter since he worked his way up to the lead. And then he would lose it shortly afterwards to Bruce Wilkinson in the 7. Wilkinson's very few starts have been nothing short of outstanding, and that has landed him a full-time ride with Gravity Racing Inc. for next season. Siju Dejao in the 37 has worked his way up into the top 10 after that scuffle with Lucas Sweeney. His team owner Tom Delgado told the press that if Dejao didn't put the hammer down this weekend, then he would be likely to lose his ride. However, tonight he's been charging up through the field ever since the start of the race. Another guy charging through the field is Jim Hayes in the 20. It looks like he has found his footing since the last time we saw him, and now he has made his way up into the top 5. Mike Andrews in the 500 was also clawing his way to the front, and here he is taking the lead from Bruce Wilkinson. Andrews gave up full-time racing in the Elite Series to pursue a ride with Tyrone Stanley's team in the TM Junior Series, which he established to promote African-American drivers. Andrews only attempted the races in Illinois this season, and his car bears the same number that he uses in the Junior Series. Andrews built up a comfortable lead, as you can see from Bruce Wilkinson's roof cam, and hello, Jim Hayes. There's the speed we've been expecting from his Tonnerre Thunder. Hayes is going to have no problem taking the lead from Mike Andrews shortly before lap 100, and from there Hayes was pretty much untouchable. Jim Hayes is going to go on to take the C-Main and transfer to the Rockford 200. Mike Andrews in the 500 remained in second for the rest of the race, Lawrence Burr third, Yafali Anamiha in fourth, Bruce Wilkinson fifth, Earl McDermott sixth, Siju Dejao 7th, Olivier Martinez 8th, Joel Rodriguez 9th, and DJ Daniels rounds out the top 10. We will now go over to the B main, which featured the drivers 11th through 20th in the points, as well as the drivers who finished 3rd and 4th in the qualifiers. Namimura won the pole in car number 39, with Harrianola on her outside. But coming through the first corner, Mura slides up the track, opening up the door for Brenda Riggs. Shane Lake in the 155 takes advantage as well. Winston White in the 333 decides to join the party, and it looks like he's going to take third. At the tail end of the field, Sean Donnelly in the 08 is going to experience trouble right off the bat. He gets into Joseph Howard coming off of turn 2 and takes himself into the inside wall. It's been an up-and-down season for Donnelly, who is not returning to Riggs Motorsports next season, and it looks like his year is going to end on a sour note. Back at the business end of the field, Winston White clawed his way up to second, decided that wasn't good enough, and took the lead from Brenda Riggs without a problem. Winston White is making his ARLA debut tonight in the new Fortner FS260, the only Fortner in the field, and so far it's working out pretty well for him. Ricky Navarro in the 34 has clawed his way to the front of the field, and he sweeps by Winston White without much of a problem. Navarro would soon be caught by his teammate and car owner Brenda Riggs, and she gets together with the 34 coming off of 2, takes both cars into the inside wall. John Steffens in the 02 tries to take advantage around the outside, but Riggs has the preferred line. Not sure why she did that. She didn't say anything on a radio about it, but Navarro was none too happy. Looks like Riggs is going to try to get around him again. Navarro moves up, probably out of fear of being hit again. Navarro would then come under attack from Shane Lake, who turns the 34 in front of the whole field, and several cars pile in. Namimura, Bernie Fellows, I think, got a piece. John Nasanike in the 47A. I think Bill Tissum got a little piece of that. Here's what happened to Nasanike. Todd Stater, it looks like, got into the wall trying to avoid this. Leslie Riggs, William Jefferson, Armand Mitro, Chris Johans and Harrianola were also involved. I forgot to mention that. Navarro and Mura were both done for the night. Brenda Riggs led on the restart. Eric Jackson in car number 3 just got around John Steffens for a second, and it looks like he wants more. He's got a very nice run on Brenda Riggs coming into turn 1, and there you see Armand Mitro coming back onto the track a few laps down. Here comes Winston White to try to take second. Ooh, he gets together with the 67 a little bit. Maybe that's Karma trying to fight her back. White would also manage to take the lead from Eric Jackson, and that is the 133 of William Jefferson back out on the track after his crew made some repairs to that car. And there he goes back into the pits again. Apparently, his crew didn't do a good enough job. And hello, Chris Johans. The 164 comes from out of nowhere to take the lead. Here comes Brenda Riggs once again, sweeping by Chris Johans to retake the lead. And then Cody Richards in the 53 is going to have a shot at the top spot. Richards finally got his first Elite Series victory at Appleton at the end of October. Richards has been competing in the series for 12 seasons, and he's been close to victory a few times, especially in recent years, but never came through until that night. Dale Underwood in car number 03 is starting to make his way forward as well. Underwood won at the Alberta Superspeedway a while ago, taking the win from Lucas Hunter on the last lap. Apparently, Karma wasn't quite done with Brenda Riggs. Her engine blows up on lap 77. The M&J cars have had many mechanical problems this season, and hopefully this will be their last one of the year. Richards led for much of the second half of the race, but in the closing laps, here comes Chris Johans in the 164 to take the lead away from him. And then Richards promptly causes the incident that will force the race to end under yellow. He gets into the lapped car of Harry Enola coming into turn 1 and pushes him up into the wall. Chris Johans would go on to take the B main at a blazing 35 miles an hour and transfer to the Rockford 200. Cody Richards would hang on to the second spot, Dale Underwood third, John Nasonike in fourth, Eric Jackson fifth, Winston White sixth, Bernie Fellows seventh, Bill Tissum eighth, Todd Stater ninth, and Joseph Howard rounds out the top 10. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. It is time to kick off the 2010 Rockford 200, featuring the top 10 in driver points and the top 2 finishers in each of the qualifiers. Scott Morales took the pole for the 200 with Amy Harrison on his outside. Those two are actually fighting for the Rookie of the Year award this season. In row number 2, we have PHILLIP Borland in car number 99. Great qualifying effort for that team. And then Kevin Monroe in the 63 on his outside. Row number 3 is the 13A of Leon KENISTON, who drives in the Team Master Cup Series. And on his outside is Jeff Little, an ARLA Street Stocks regular, making his first Elite Series start. Row number 4, we have Kurt Walker and Jeb Klinger making his final Elite Series start tonight. He's posted several good finishes lately, which has earned him a spot in the top 10 in points. Row 5, Jason Bates, a long shot for the title, and a surprise in Scott Woolen in car number 06. He makes the Rockford 200 in his first attempt. Row 6, Packer Carroll and Aaron Cruz in the unsponsored number 24. Row number 7, we have another TM Master Cup driver, Rachel Rainsford, in the 27 Volpe, and then Alex Carson on her outside. In row number 8, we have Ken Groves, who I believe is making his first ARLA Elite Series start since 2008, and then Rybert Scott, who we believe is going to be back in that 33 car next season. Row 9, Rush McLeod, who is normally Packer Carroll's crew chief, making his Elite Series debut, with Andy Pearson second in points coming into this race on his outside. In row number 10, we have Rip Tyler in the 555, and Bobby Porteau, your championship leader. And then starting in the last row, the winners of the B and C mains, Chris Johans and Jim Hayes. And there goes the 22-car field for their warm-up laps. Pace car pulls off the track, leaving the field in the hands of Scott Morales. And the 2010 Rockford 200 is green. Morales skates up the track, coming through turn 1, but they all make it through cleanly. PHILLIP Borland sneaks by and will lead the first lap of the race. A few laps later, Kurt Walker claws his way up to the front, and now he wants to go at the lead. Borland lets the 98 go without much of a problem, a wise decision on his part considering that this is a 200-lap race. However, one guy who didn't really take that into consideration was Rybert Scott. He gets into the 28 of Alex Carson coming into turn 1, pushes him for a while, and then shoves him up into the wall. This didn't bring out a yellow flag, and I'm not entirely sure what Rybert Scott was thinking, making such an aggressive move early on in the race. Kurt Walker comes under attack from Leon Keniston. However, he gets a very nice run coming off the second corner and is able to keep the lead. But Kurt Walker wasn't safe. Ken Groves in the 74 got around Leon Keniston and decided to take the lead from Walker as well. Not a bad move for a driver who hasn't been in one of these cars since the season finale in 2008. The incredible speed of the new Tonnerre Thunder was perhaps the biggest story of this week, and Jim Hayes in the 20 is happily giving us another demonstration of that car's capabilities. He has gotten that car up to 4th not long after the drop of the green flag, and remember, he started last in this race. Aaron Cruz and Packer Carroll are in front of Hayes with some decent showings so far. However, right now, Bobby Porteau is not having a decent showing when it matters the most for him. Porteau has really not made any progress since the start of the race, and right now his championship rival Andy Pearson is challenging for a spot in the top 5, and considering that Pearson was only a little over 30 points behind Porteau coming into this race, Porteau is really going to have to pick it up. Speaking of Andy Pearson, he has just taken second from Leon Keniston and is now trying to chase down Ken Groves. Pearson is going for his record 5th championship, and so far, it looks like that's going to happen. Jason Bates entered this race 3rd in the standings, 54 points behind Bobby Porteau. So in order to win the title, Bates is pretty much going to have to win the race, with Bobby Porteau and Andy Pearson finishing around last. By the way, Jason Bates has never won a race in the Elite Series, so it appears that his championship hopes are in trouble. The first caution flew on lap 36. PHILLIP Borland makes a very aggressive move into turn 1, gets into Kurt Walker and takes both cars into the outside wall, though not much damage is done to either car. Ken Groves in the 74 continues to lead on the restart. Pearson wastes no time jumping to the inside, and they get together coming into turn 1. However, they both managed to hang on, so no real harm done, though the officials warned Pearson to be a little more careful when passing cars. Jim Hayes in the 20 takes advantage of this little scuffle and jumps up to 2nd. Jason Bates in the 51 ended up behind the leaders as things settle down, and he gets into Hayes going into turn 1 for the 2nd spot. However, he's still got his momentum, and there goes the 51 by Andy Pearson to take the lead. Bobby Porteau in the 64 still hasn't made much progress. However, he is slowly working on that, getting by Packer Carroll in car number 71, and he's going to try to take the spot from Scott Morales as well. So it looks like Porteau does have a good car tonight, but he's just struggling to find his footing. Rush McLeod in the 171 has clawed his way up to the front. McLeod was entered in this race as a 5th car for Gravity Racing Inc. He was kind of written off as unlikely to make the field, but here he is running in the 3rd spot. In fact, he was 2nd at the beginning of this clip, but the spot was taken from him by Jeff Little, also having a very good run so far. Jim Hayes still has a lot of speed left in that 20 car, and he shows it by taking the lead from Jason Bates. Looking back at Bobby Porteau, he is still running midfield. He gets into Aaron Cruz a little bit, coming off of turn number 4. He gets into Cruz again, going into turn 1. I wonder what's going on there. Porteau goes into the wall, back in front of traffic. Your points leader goes out of the race on lap 85. Ken Groves in the 74 also got a piece of that after having such a good run. Let's have another look at that. This is the initial contact. Looks like Porteau just had too much speed going into the corner. He gets together with a 24 again, and it looks like Cruz just had enough of that and knocked Porteau into the inside wall. He bounces back in front of his teammate and car owner, Chris Johans. Then he clobbers the pit wall opening in turn 3. Score on board with Aaron Cruz. He gets shoved up the track by Porteau right there. Then coming off the corner, he turns the wheel ever so slightly to the left. And now let's take a look at that from Porteau's on board. Here is the initial contact. Once again, he really pushed Cruz through 3 and 4. And then there is the second impact. I'm not sure what that was about. And then Cruz appears to retaliate. And then the heavy impact with the turn 3 wall. Porteau was furious at Cruz. He said that the 24 was trying to impede him through those last couple of corners, while Aaron Cruz told his crew chief that he knew Porteau was the points leader, but he was not going to tolerate being roughed up by anybody. Nonetheless, this is a huge blow for Porteau's championship efforts, and Andy Pearson is definitely going to reap the benefits if he can get back up front. But at the moment, the man up front is Jim Hayes in car number 20. Jason Bates was second, but Jeff Little into 16 blew by him, and here he comes to take the lead from Hayes. I'm not even sure you can call that a paint scheme on the 16. I think they just showed up with primer. Packer Carroll in the 71 was black flagged for passing Jeb Klinger on the inside before the start-finish line when the race restarted. I don't really think that's a fair ruling. It looked like Klinger checked up at the start. But Packer Carroll would have to come into the pits and serve a stop-and-go penalty. However, he was able to get out of the pits just before he went a lap down. Scott Woolen, making his first start in car number 06, has a little run-in with Leon Keniston in the 13A. And then up ahead of them, you see Jim Hayes take the lead back from Jeff Little. Scott Woolen appears to have not lost any momentum from the contact with Keniston, because here he comes to take the top spot from Hayes. And then Woolen's car would just take off. He opened up a pretty big lead over the rest of the field. Andy Pearson has worked his way back to second. Packer Carroll went a lap down shortly after Woolen took the lead. But Scott Woolen has done a great job this weekend, despite never showing his face around the ARLA rinks before. I have a feeling that if he keeps up his performance, a few teams are going to come knocking at his door. Andy Pearson, as I just mentioned, has worked his way back up to the front, so if the race were to end right now, the championship would be his. However, right now, he's hit a bit of a snag. He's being freight trained by his competitors, and Kurt Walker is going to push him back to fifth. Chris Johans in the 164 has just been put a lap down. Last week's winner was involved in the wreck that took out Bobby Porteau, and he is off the pace due to his clearly visible damage. His foot is missing, but thankfully he's being a gracious back marker, moving out of the way for pretty much everybody. Caution 3 came out on lap 85. Rush McLeod gets into Rybert Scott coming off of turn 4. Kevin Monroe gets a little piece of that, and Rybert Scott is sent spinning down the front straight away. No real harm done there. Scott did not lose too many positions, but I can't imagine that he'd be too happy at McLeod right now. Scott Woolen continues to lead on the restart. Kurt Walker in car number 98 is right behind him. Walker, a former two-time Elite Series champion, gets a run on the inside of Scott Woolen, and he's going to take the lead going into turn 3. Caution 4 occurred on lap 93. Philip Borland gets into Kevin Monroe, and Aaron Cruz finishes off the 99, sending him spinning up the turn 2 banking. However, there's no damage done to Borland's car, and he keeps going. Mechanical problems strike Andy Pearson under this caution. Coming to the restart, he dives into the pits to fix an unknown issue, and he is going to lose a lap doing so. So this is not doing Pearson's championship hopes any favor. Kurt Walker leads on the restart with Jeff Little in second. Scott Woolen got pushed back to third. Here comes Little on the inside to take the lead from Walker, and Pearson rejoins just as he goes a lap down. Tough break for car number 2. This would be followed by the 5th caution on lap number 100, again involving Kevin Monroe, who goes hard into the turn 4 wall after contact with Jim Hayes and Scott Woolen. Kevin Monroe got the car started up again, which indicates that he's okay, but his night is done. Jeff Little leads on the restart with Leon Keniston in second. Andy Pearson is still a lap down. Several times tonight, we've seen the guy who restarted second get a great run on the leader. However, it looks like Pearson is not able to make that same move here. Scott Woolen is going to have to make a trip to the pits. He developed a tire rub after that last incident, and so he's going to have to get that repaired. He would lose a few laps doing so. Tough break for Woolen. He had a great run tonight until he got caught up in someone else's mess. Kurt Walker has taken the lead from Jeff Little. Leon Keniston runs third in the 13A, and that is Rachel Rainsford in car number 27 running fourth. Kurt Walker has not won a race since his championship year in 2007. However, Walker told reporters that he's had a very good season in his first year of team ownership. He is in the top 10 in points, and his teammate Namimura got that organization's first win at Buffalo Downs, albeit on a technicality. Rachel Rainsford, who I mentioned just a few moments ago, has made a little more progress. She is up to second. Rainsford does not have a ride lined up anywhere in 2011. However, there is at least one ARLA team that is looking to put her in a ride. Jeb Klinger is looking to shine in what he said would be his final ARLA Elite Series event, and he is certainly doing that so far. He took second from Rachel Rainsford a few laps ago. The 76-year-old Klinger was the winner of the inaugural ARLA event in 1973, but here in 2010, he showed that he was still competitive by putting himself in position to win several races. But in 2011, he will begin a new career hosting his own trackside talk show here on OEN. We're looking forward to seeing how that turns out. Chris Johans in the 164 is going to be put another lap down. However, he's still being a pretty gracious back marker. And you see Scott Woolen several car lengths ahead of Walker. They're going to come up on him shortly. Jason Bates gets a big run on Walker and closes the gap he had on the rest of the field very quickly. Andy Pearson is still a lap down, and to add insult to injury, it appears that the handling on his car may be starting to go away. He's been freight trained by most of the field, but he gets a run on Alex Carson, his teammate, and he gets together with the 28. I'm not sure that did Pearson's car any favors. We are way past the halfway point, so it looks like Pearson's drive for 5 is going to come up a little short unless something really big happens. Jeff Klinger has gotten around Jason Bates, and here he comes to take the lead from Kurt Walker. He gets together with the 98 a little bit, but no harm done there. Klinger won in his first ARLA race, and now it looks like he's putting himself in position to win his last ARLA race. Riding on board with Jeff Klinger, you see that the leaders have not caught Scott Woolen yet. It appears that Woolen is still very fast, and hello, Leon Keniston! The 13A makes a very aggressive dive, and it pays off. He takes the lead from Jeff Klinger and opens up a very nice gap in a matter of seconds. But Leon Keniston is a short tracker at heart, and it is not surprising to see him make this kind of move stick. However, a few laps later, Kurt Walker catches up to Keniston and once again takes the lead. Scott Woolen in the 06 has still not been caught by the leaders, but he's not actually impeding anyone, so he has every right to keep himself from going another lap down. More problems for Chris Johans. This time, Andy Pearson goes into turn 1 with a little too much speed. He gets into the 164 and pushes him up into the wall, collecting Pearson's teammate, Alex Carson. This would take Carson out of the race, so if I were Alex Carson, I don't think I would be too happy with my team boss right now. Under that yellow flag, mechanical problems strike Kurt Walker in the 98. Walker would be able to get that car into the pits and repaired without losing a lap, but this was still a big heartbreaker for that team because it looked like Walker had one of the fastest cars out there. This would hand the lead to Leon Keniston with Jason Bates in second. Keniston is able to hold off Bates coming through the first couple of corners. That is Jeff Little in third, with Jeff Klinger in fourth, and Jim Hayes rounding out the top 5. A few laps later, Jason Bates would finally get a run on Keniston and take the lead from the 13A. If Bates stays at the front and Andy Pearson has any more problems, the championship could fall into his hands. Rybert Scott has come up towards the front as the race heads into its final stages. Scott has been fairly impressive in his very few starts so far, and we believe that he will be back to run the full 2011 schedule. And then Scott Morales is right behind him in the third position. Morales, who our pole sitter, is competing with Amy Harrison for the Rookie of the Year award, as I mentioned before the race. Speaking of Amy Harrison, here she is running just a few spots behind Morales. Harrison ran a few ARLA Thunder Trucks races last year in place of her injured brother Joey, and she was very impressive in those few starts. That led to a ride with Motor Assault Racing for this season, and she will be back with that team next year, as well as a ride with Alexis Rainsford's team in the TM Lights. A few laps later, Harrison would get by Aaron Cruz and start chasing down Jason Bates. However, Bates would soon find a ton of speed in that 51 car like Revolution, and he would open up a very big gap over the rest of the field. And I'm sure the lap car of Chris Johans is helping out his gap a little bit. But that lead would be reduced to nothing with the next caution. Packer Carroll gets into Jim Hayes coming into turn 1, sending Hayes spinning up in the wall, and he gets rear-ended by Jeff Little in the 16. This could be karmic retribution for Jim Hayes. He did ruffle a few people's feathers in the qualifiers. Jason Bates has a bit of a cushion on the restart. Chris Johans is right behind him, and he's a few laps down. Johans also holds up the rest of the field on the restart, but Amy Harrison's going to get by him really quickly. And then Harrison would have no issues wheeling in the 51 and snatching the lead with less than 15 laps to go. Here comes Rush McLeod in the 171 to join the final leg frenzy. He's taken some peeks at the front during the course of the race, but he hasn't really made any serious attempts until now. McLeod is normally Packer Carroll's crew chief, and his wife Regina drives in the ARLA Street Stocks, and she will make the jump to Formula Overdrive next year. And here comes Rush McLeod with a run on Amy Harrison to take the lead. I guess he caught Harrison completely by surprise because she made no attempt to defend her position. With just 7 laps to go, the action would be interrupted by the final caution. Jim Hayes gets into Scott Woolen coming off of turn 2, and he's really leading on the 06, and he pushes him up into the turn 3 wall. I think that looked a little intentional on Hayes' part, and the officials seemed to agree. They called him right to the hauler. Many people wondered whether the race would end under yellow or on a one-lap shootout. Well, we're riding on board Rush McLeod, coming to 2 laps to go. We'll see what the pace car does. Oh, the lights are still on. The race is going to end under yellow. I'm sure a lot of fans were disappointed about this, but at the same time, this means that Rush McLeod is going to win the Rockford 200 in his first ARLA Elite Series start. McLeod was entered as a one-off car for Gravity Racing Inc. That team was winless coming into this race, so I'm sure that this was a very nice surprise for them. Amy Harrison finished in second. I believe that's her best career finish. Robert Scott gets his best career finish. He finished in third. Rachel Rainsford fourth. Jason Bates in fifth. Jeb Klinger sixth in his final Elite Series start. Kurt Walker finishes off the season with a top 10 finish. Leon KENNISTON in 8th, Aaron Cruz 9th, and Scott Morales rounds out the top 10. Even though the checkered flag has fallen here at the Rockford 200, there is still one last thing that needs to be taken care of. After a long, heated points battle, the 2010 ARLA Elite Series champion is Bobby Porto by 14 points over Andy Pearson. Both Porto and Pearson have 2 wins, 5 top 5s, and 8 top 10s this season, and Pearson actually has 2 fewer DNFs than Bobby Porto, but Porto was still able to come out on top. Jason Bates is third, 20 points behind Bobby Porto. Bates also has 5 top 5s and 8 top 10s, but no race victories. Packer Carroll is a distant 74 points behind Porto, but he still gets his first top 5 points finish. Kevin Monroe is in 5th. He won the 120 laps of Dwyer earlier in the season. Kurt Walker, 6th. Amy Harrison is your 2010 Rookie of the Year. Jeb Klinger ends his driving career on a very high note. He is 8th in the final standings. Scott Morales won the season opener at Daytona and was able to hang on to a top 10 spot all season. And then Alex Carson very quietly rounds out the top 10, 196 points behind Bobby Porto. And that's all for the American Racing League of America's action-packed 2010. For the OEN, I am Scott Bush, and I will see you next season.